Support for the podcast comes from the Social Enrichment Center in Media, Pennsylvania. The SEC was founded to support individuals, families, schools, and community organizations. Their objective is to build the self-confidence and social connectedness of children, adolescents, and young adults. SEC provides direct care to young people, utilizing evidence-based therapeutic and instructional strategies. Their team equips caregivers with developmentally appropriate skills and strategies to build each client's social competencies. In addition to socially and behaviorally focused dyads and group therapies, they offer individual psychotherapy, individual social skills therapy, as well as several related services on site, at schools, and in the home. Therapy sessions are available in group or individual format for clients ages 2 to 25. They're contracted with a speech and language pathologist and an occupational therapist who provide these services on site. Learn more about the Social Enrichment Center at socialenrichmentcenter.com. Hello and welcome back to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner and I Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Desper, founder of the Center for Confident Parenting and a mom who seems to learn everything I need to know the hard way. Today, I am joined by Dr. Brianna Matey, a clinical psychologist and the founder of Open Mind Psychological, which provides psychological services for children, adults, families, and professionals. Dr. Matey is also a mom in the thick of it. She has a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-month-old. So I'm excited to hear your take on all things parenting. Dr. Matey, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and thank you for working through all my technical issues.
Life. That is life.
It's life. I said it wasn't going to be life today, but today was like, ha, ha, ha.
You don't want to say it.
Right. Why did I even say it out loud, let alone think it? So first, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and what brought you to this type of work.
Yeah. So like you said, I have 2 girls and a little baby boy at home. And my husband and we live locally. We love this area in terms of leading me to this life. I don't know that I ever thought I was going to be the mom of 3. Let's just start with that. And so feel very lucky there. And in terms of psychology, I knew in high school I wanted to be a psychologist, which actually sounds funny because when I'm working with high schoolers and college age people, I'm like, it's okay to not know because it's usually what happens, right?
Right. How could you know?
I had a psychology class in high school and I just really connected with it. And I ended up getting my undergrad and then did my master's and then I went for my doctorate and just fell in love with the field and supporting people in different ways. So
awesome.
That's what got me here.
Well, we're very happy to have you. So most of us as parents and humans are familiar with what a psychological evaluation might be, what treatment might entail. But today I wanted to focus on one of your offerings that's maybe we may be less familiar with, which is what you call a high-risk assessment. What is that? Let's start with that. What is a high-risk assessment?
A high-risk assessment is really, it sounds just like what it is. It is when someone, whether it be a school entity, at any level, elementary, high school, university level, or, a parent identifies that there's something going on and I don't know what it is. And I'm really concerned for my child's or my young adults, safety, whether it's safety for self or safety for others. So during that high risk assessment, we're really evaluating for safety. At times we're doing a safety plan. At times we're using different clinical measures as well as clinical interview with whoever, whatever caregiver's bringing the individual, as well as the individual themselves. And then we're meeting together. It does take about 2 hours, so it's pretty intensive in terms of what we're diving into. If it was identified by a specific incident or multiple incidents over time, we're collaborating with whatever entity may have suggested or required the assessment, and we're providing recommendations and next steps and what we like to call it just like a roadmap for what to do from here. Where do we go? How do we either normalize the experience, support the experience to get to a higher level of care, or get the individual back to baseline?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So not being familiar with this myself, thank goodness yet. Who
Mhm.
knows what life will bring? What type of scenarios, like what would an incident be that
Mhm.
might make an entity or a parent say, like, we need to meet with someone?
Yep. So let's start with social media.
Mm.
Somebody found something on social media, somebody said something on social media, somebody identified that there was a concern on social media because we're all access and see different things. And kids may have interpreted something differently, or kids might have intentionally said something on there that that got flagged,
Raised a
um,
flag. Okay.
either by another child to their parent or from a school personnel. So social media is one platform. Notes, something in a journal, something that pops up at school in a picture that we've drawn or communicated. There's times where I felt really safe with my teacher, and the teacher came and said, "What's going on?" And I was able to be vulnerable in that moment. And the teacher said, "We have to do something, and I want to make sure that I'm connecting you." And they're connecting to the counseling center, who then is supporting it with the caregivers and connecting them to somewhere. Um, and then there's times where the parent there was a gesture, there was something that occurred, an actual action that happened in the home or in the school setting that's warranted the parent to say to the school, "Hey, this happened," and the school saying, let's get you connected to somebody who can further evaluate and see what we need to do," or the school saying, "Before we continue on our academic journey, let's make sure the mental health is assessed and identified for what the individual's needs are, and move forward." So
Mhm.
it's the nonverbals, it's the verbals, and it's the actions.
Okay, gotcha. And just to clarify, like, if it's a parent that's doing it, anything that makes them concerned for their child's safety, the parent's safety, or I presume like siblings in the home, safety
Correct.
for anyone.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
got it. And so that kind of answers my next question of who can coordinate or ask for this high risk assessment. So obviously a school or other entity like that, but a parent, maybe the school isn't concerned yet, the parent's just seeing it in the home.
Yep.
They
And
could
what
come to you.
happens there is that there's times where a parent's saying, "I don't, this, I'm seeing this and I don't know what to do about it. And I don't want to just jump into
Right.
X, right? Or I don't want to just go to the emergency room or go
Right.
call
They're not even
crisis."
sure if it is a crisis.
Right. And or like, what do I do with it? Like, where do I go? So that the point of the risk assessment is to A, evaluate risk, but then B, evaluate what level of care should we start at. Because if starting at traditional outpatient is setting you up for months of time that could have been lost by getting a more intensive treatment, because that's where we should have started from the beginning. And that's usually that would be identified as part of the recommendations and support for next steps.
Okay, got it. And I mean, I'm thinking that a student or young adult or whatever child that's in this place might not be thrilled about coming in for a 2 hour high risk assessment. So I presume they're often not willing? Do they have to be like, I want this?
They don't have to be, "I want this," but, what I will say is we're wearing our clinical hat, right? We're building rapport. We're not just like, "Okay, let's dive in," right?
Right.
Like, we're making it as, supportive and connective with where the individual is at. I will say that individuals who have actually made the communication or the gesture do actually open up they're ready to open up because 'cause they've
Okay.
been
So if we
in
can
some
get
way.
them there, you can probably do the rest.
Right, right.
Got it.
Now there's definitely times where it might be an individual that's like, "I didn't mean it," right? "I didn't mean this. This is just why are we doing this? Like, this
It
is
was
just
a joke or
we're blowing this up," right?
Mhm.
And we have to identify with, you know, we have to take that seriously, right? Like, I hear you. We still are gonna do this. And let's make sure that we understand, like, when you're feeling this way, what are other ways we can get those needs met? Because
Right.
maybe saying or doing that is not what you actually meant, but that's what those around you have to hear and say.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So it could boil in theory, it could be something where someone was being hyperbolic or joking, and you determine that there isn't a huge risk. There's just a need for education about better alternatives in the future.
Well, yeah, correct. Or, supports for like if there is a conflict between two individuals, like how do we get the school or get wherever to support with conflict management within what is going on here,
Right.
or looking at this differently.
Yeah. Okay. So, what you're trying to determine is there truly a crisis or a need? And then the second piece of that is once you've identified what that is, what the appropriate next step or next level of care, that roadmap that you talked about, what are some of those options? Like,
Yeah.
where could a person end up once you've done this assessment?
Yeah. So more often than not, especially if they are stable enough to come here, right? If they're stable enough that like this isn't a true emergency, we're not going to the crisis center, we're not going to the
Right.
emergency room, then because we're usually getting somebody in within 24 to 40, like our offering is very quickly after the call. However, that to say, if I was doing a consult on it and I felt like you couldn't wait that 24 to 48 hours, then we should
Yeah.
be coming here anyway. We should be going to the emergency or the crisis center.
Right.
So the majority of those recommendations, there are times where we might recommend a partial hospitalization, which is a step down from inpatient.
Hmm.
And that could be like a 2 week stabilization period. That's much more on if we're concerned about substances at this point. If we're concerned about substances, more often than not, it might be an intensive outpatient where I'm getting therapy more than just once a week for an hour. So an IOP could be another one. Sometimes, if it's a younger individual, we're looking at other in-home services or family-based services that are able to support the family system in the home at a more intensive frequency than traditional outpatient. There's times where it is recommended for outpatient and support differently in school, with somebody who they actually feel safe and comfortable with, and kind of tweaking some things that are happening in that environment at school, particularly if it's the origination from there.
Okay, great. That is super helpful. I mean, this all sounds very, I don't want to use the word scary, serious, intimidating, but it's also excellent to know that I wouldn't want to figure this out by myself as a
Right.
parent. So it's nice to know that, and I might not want to raise a big enough flag to run to a crisis center if I wasn't quite sure that's what was
Right.
needed. So it sounds like this is obviously to you filling a need
Right.
that's sort of, someone in between. So that's excellent. Anything else you would want parents, caregivers to hear or to know about this particular option, this process?
Yeah, I think that the biggest piece to note is like the upfront and then the end. So the upfront, recognizing that just because you feel it, like there's times where of course it might be stipulated you have to do it, right?
Right.
In which case you got to do it. But there's times where if it's like I'm just not sure, hashing that out during a consult to say like, do we need to, right? Would this be appropriate? Not every high risk statement or high risk thought needs to result in a high risk assessment, because we can do parts of this in a traditional kind of therapeutic experience, but not to the intensity that we're going to do, or not to the documentation
Right.
that you're going to walk away with. However, starting with a consult sometimes, if especially as a parent, if nobody's stipulating it, could be really helpful to kind of walk through different options and what you could get from different things. And then on the back end, it is knowing that you have a place that you're connected with, that you might not get treatment from them ever again, right? But that
Right.
you feel connected with asking. I will share, there's plenty of times where we'll get calls from a parent to say, hey, I know you haven't seen us in a year, but this is where we're at. What are your thoughts on this, right? Just knowing that you have a place that isn't a in the trenches with you outside in the school or the academia world, but also has a lot of experience in different levels of care that can kind of guide or direct or support in different ways.
Awesome. That is wonderful, wonderful to know. And I hope this helps someone out there that is maybe in that position or will find themselves in that position. All right, so let's do a shift. Take off your clinician hat if you can, wear just your mom hat. I know that when I first became a mom, my husband at the time, and I was like all stressed about sleep. And he was like, I wish you didn't know all the stuff that you know, because it means that you want to see things go a certain way. And when they don't go that way, you're like all stressed out about it. Um, so do you find that knowing what you know about mental health and like everything, does that make parenting easier for you? Because you're like, I've got this. my kids aren't going to end up in therapy, or harder because you know that, like, how does that
DNA
affect
is
your parenting?
DNA, right? Like there are certain parts of mental health that we're hardwired for. So
For
I will
sure.
not be shocked if, one of my children are seeing a therapist one day,
Right.
right?
Statistically, you've got three.
Um, I would say it's a little bit of both. There's times where it's really hard to take off my clinician hat and like not be doing a behavior modification for my 6-year-old who just like might need a little snuggle, right? And I'm just like, we got to do this, and you want to earn your punch today, you could do this. Come on.
Right.
Or like managing her anxiety more from like a clinical lens versus just like a
Just
lot
a
of
mom.
kids, a lot of girls that are 6 years old can be anxious in different settings. And hey, guess
Right.
what? That's where I was at when I was 6, and I'm okay, right?
Right.
So there's times where I probably struggle there, but then there's times that I think, where my husband didn't have that kind of exposure. He's like, Brie, should we be worried about this? And I'm like, you know what? We're not going to worry about it. We're not going to. We don't have to, right? We're going to be here, and then we'll make that decision at this point. So I also think it allows like some of the childhood and early childhood development understanding. I think it has supported me. Now I'm lucky because they're only up to 6, right?
Right.
I know
we'll
what happens.
we'll circle back in a couple of years. I'll ask you that question again.
As she becomes 10, feel free to ask that question again. But
Right.
yes, I think it's been a little bit of both.
Yeah. Well, and I think it just speaks to, like, I always tell parents, like, you're the expert on your child, above and beyond any professional or self-touting expert. But that can also go in reverse. Like, just because you're an expert in mental health, I don't think that sets you much further ahead in your parenting, because it's like it's emotional and you're seeing it through that emotional filter, and it
100%.
is hard to probably turn off your clinician mode and just be a
100%.
mom. But it is nice to know what things to maybe worry about and what things, not to. That's a good piece. So now that you have 6, 4, and 5 months, I'm sure adding in the 5-month-old has changed everything. So what are
Mhm.
you finding most challenging about parenting right now?
I think right now it is. I think it's turning on. Like, I think it's like having that bandwidth to know what I want to give my kids as mom, right? And being able to turn off, being able to shut down. Um, and I think so. I think that's like the hardest. On top of as the sleep. You do it professionally and you did it personally. The sleep is like not always helping me in that regard to shut down and like
Yeah.
use all my executive functioning and all of those good things. But yeah, I think it's being able to shut off, I think is really hard, and just staying present with my kids in whatever we're doing and not, going into a different world.
Yeah, so many of the guests that I've had have echoed similar sentiments of, like, the work life balance, the mom guilt, the being in the moment and not thinking about the next thing. So if you
Mhm.
are listening or watching and struggling with that, it's not just you. You are not alone. The
Mhm.
struggle is real, and even experts struggle with it.
Mhm.
So that's what's hard right now. What is bringing you the most joy in parenting right now?
Joy is literally like again, like I'm still in that lucky little ages where they are running as soon as they hear the door open and they think it's me, right? Like I'm still we just like took a vacation last week together. They are just in this like exploration age where they're like, the 6-year-old's trying to become a 10-year-old who maybe wants to be 15 the next day, and just watching them grow. And it's just awesome. Like they're just exploring life and learning it. And it's cool to be able to experience them discovering themselves and like getting comfortable and feeling confident in themselves in different ways.
I love that. That's wonderful. All right. So I have one more question for you today. Um, what's one thing you've learned on your own parenting journey that maybe we have not touched on yet, that you wish that you knew sooner, did sooner, learned sooner, and you want other parents to hear or know today?
That's a really good one, and like also feels really loaded, right?
Right.
Um, but I think just knowing that it's a blend of like you are the expert of your child, and I think that supporting like your gut when you need to, but also just not not worrying about that next thing all the time, because then we miss just so many things in between. So I think that I practice trying to practice patience and trying to practice flexibility. I wish I recognized younger how important it is to be flexible in life, and like when we can accept flexibility, a lot of other things can fall where they need to fall, right? Maybe not fall into place the way you thought, but where they need to fall. And so I think that patience and flexibility piece, probably if I could have learned that a little earlier, would be great, because it feels
Yeah.
really great when we can accept that now.
That is an excellent tip. And I feel like some people maybe are just naturally flexible and patient, and some of us do have to make it an ongoing
Hmm.
practice. I feel like motherhood and also like entrepreneurship will
Hmm.
teach you those things either by way of like you just realize it's necessary, or maybe you break, which hopefully we don't want anyone to break.
Right, right.
Definitely learn to bend before you break. And
Yeah,
these are two journeys where you will probably discover the need for that. And sometimes we have to, see it for ourselves. But if anyone can take that from your experience and figure it out earlier on, I think they may have a slightly easier
yeah.
journey. That was all really excellent information. Dr. Matey, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure we'll have you
Great.
back again on another topic. I'll let everyone know how to find you in the
All right, great.
description. I'll be back soon, listeners, with more stuff that I and others wish that we knew sooner. In the meantime, I'll leave you with my list of stuff I've learned the hardest way. Your to-do list will always be there, so put yourself on it. You can't pour from an empty cup, so schedule ways to refill yours every day. And there's no way to be a perfect parent, countless ways to be a good one. That is all for now. We'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.